Hello, everybody. Welcome into today's WeVideo webinar event. Thank you so much for joining us, either if this is the afternoon or the evening for you, or maybe even perhaps the morning, depending on where you are tuning in from. We're glad to have you today for a special webinar event, a first of its kind, at least that I've been a part of here at WeVideo. We're going to be sharing with you today results from a survey that we conducted over the past 6 months of this year, and we'll go into depth about what that means and share all kinds of insights that we learned from that survey. As we're getting going today, I always give just a beat of a minute for folks to come in. If you'd like to share where you are viewing from today, that would be great to see. Hello, good afternoon, Tina. Hi, Brad. So come on in and let us know where you're coming from today. We're hoping that this event, is going to shed some light on a really important topic. We've titled the webinar Inside the Classroom, How Might Teachers Solve for Student Engagement? And so that's what we're going to be talking a lot about today. And, we found some insights from the survey that we collected data from, but also, you're here to find out more about what we know, but I would love also as we go through this to know what you know. So please, the more interactive you are in the chat, the better off we will be at the end for our discussion when we get there. So, things that you see today that you have questions about, please ask those questions. We have one of our a couple WeVideo staff members that will be in the chat, one of which who is a huge part of the study that did the bulk of the data analysis of the study. Lydia is in the house today to answer questions specific to the data we collected, some of the insights and conclusions that we made. So please, as we go, leave your questions and comments. We will get to as many of those as we can as we go through, because I'm very interested to hear from you all about this topic and your ideas and questions and thoughts behind student engagement as we get deeper into the content. So thank you again for being here. If you can't stay with us the whole time, this webinar will be available to you on demand, so you can come back, catch something you might have missed, or rewatch what you did miss if you have to leave early. We'll be following up with you as well with an email to provide you the link directly to the on-demand recording, so you can come back and catch everything that you missed if you weren't able to be with us today, or you weren't able to be with us for the whole time. So let's get started. I'm going to do an introductions here before we dive into our content. Hello, everybody. I'm Ryan Kochevar. I'm our WeVideo's Director of Customer Success Enablement. I am a former elementary school teacher. I taught 3rd and 4th grade. I transitioned to become a STEAM programs curriculum director. Been a maker educator and a maker educator, and I've conducted education research in my time in education before coming to WeVideo to lead an amazing team of human beings that design onboarding and adoption programs for WeVideo users. So I've held a lot of roles in education, and I've been at WeVideo for quite some time now. So I'm excited to kind of present to you what we learned from the survey and what your ideas are as well. And I'm joined today by another person that led some of these survey efforts, Chris Riley. Hey, Chris.
Hey. Glad to be here. I am the Senior Manager of Product Management here at WeVideo. And so I get to interact with the team that builds this fantastic product. And we get to decide what's next and shape the future of it. So I've been doing this for quite a while now, building ed tech products. I am not a former educator, unlike Ryan. But I was in the military, which is pretty much the same thing. You educators go to battle. So does the military, but maybe we use a few different weapons. But yeah, so I love ed tech, and I'm very passionate about making products that actually work for teachers and students. So I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're going to dive in. So both Chris and I were part of the team here at WeVideo that conducted almost a study that lasted for almost 6 months in terms of the initiative that we built here to collect the data on these important topics like student engagement and teacher challenges in the classroom that we're going to be presenting today. So, one of the things we want to do is make sure that we give you an overview of what we did. Excuse me. So you understand where we came from, why we were looking into these questions in the first place, what our plan was for the study, how long the timeline for what we did, and then who we surveyed. So it's an important point in education research to make sure that we share with you who we were talking with, who we were collecting data from, so you have an idea of the context for the results that we got back, and our insights and conclusions that we drew from those results. We're going to cover the data summary. So we're going to give you some high level overview of what we found and how that relates back to EdTech generally and WeVideo specifically. And then we're going to dive deeply into student engagement, because as you're going to see in the study overview and some of the data summaries, student engagement came up over and over again as a challenge in the classroom that teachers are facing today in 2024. This is not a new challenge, of course. I think if you would have surveyed my cohort of teachers back in 2012, this would have been a top challenge as well. I think that challenge has changed dramatically, especially in a post-pandemic world. And so we really investigated and dove deep thematically into student engagement, breaking down the different buckets of what student engagement looks like in the classroom, and began to sort of put together some conclusions and insights in how we might solve for student engagement as a EdTech organization, and how we support our teachers to do that as they are on the ground in the classroom doing the work in real time. So we'll share a lot about that, and then we'll get into our conclusions. Through our conclusions, Chris and I are gonna lead, kick off the discussion about these important topics. But again, we want your comments and questions to really drive the thinking towards the end of this webinar. So we're gonna encourage you again to leave those questions and those thoughts as we go. If something perks your interest, please ask anything and everything about what we did, what we're concluding. We'd love to have that rich discussion with you all at the end of this webinar. So bear with us. We have about 20 minutes of presentation about the survey and the data, and then we're going to get into a really rich discussion about these issues. So yeah, I'm going to pitch it over to Chris. He's going to start us off and take us through the overview of our survey.
We really approached this survey as kind of a funnel approach. So if you want to go to the next slide, we wanted to start really broad. So what are the general challenges that teachers face in the classroom? So let's get kind of a big picture overview. What are the challenges? And then help us to narrow in on solutions. So, this wasn't all altruistic. There was a little bit of self-serving. We wanted to understand specifically how video technology plays a role in student engagement and in solving these problems. But we wanted to first get a response on what are those general challenges, and then how technology helps solve those challenges, and then specifically how video technology. So it really funneled down to what we were after. So if we want to jump to the next one. So the first thing we did is we went out and we found some participants. So we had 627 non-WeVideo participants. So we really approached it two different ways. We knew we wanted to get insights from people who were using WeVideo as our customers. We want to make sure that we're listening to them, but we also wanted to understand the whole education landscape in a more holistic way. So we partnered with a third-party platform. The participants were compensated for their time. We were able to find just over 600 participants who are willing to do our survey. And then as far as WeVideo, we advertise that survey within the product. So these are people who use WeVideo and had used the WeVideo within the last month, signed up and also participated. And as Ryan mentioned, if we want to jump to the next slide, This took about 6 months. So we started off really with the launch. We outlined our goals, what we wanted to accomplish, really starting from that funnel vision, then designed the questions around trying to capture or get the data that we were looking to answer, built the survey, sent it out to our participants, and then really over the summer and up until about October, we were analyzing in various phases. So the timeline says June and August, but we've been kind of ongoingly analyzing even after that. So we wanted to make sure that the information and the data that we gathered was representative and not just for WeVideo, but applicable for the education landscape as a whole. And with that, I'll pitch it back over to you, Ryan, to talk about a little bit of the demographics.
Yeah, thank you. So again, I just want to kind of level set here about why we chose the specific population that we chose. And we did focus specifically on K-12 classroom teachers as the sole sort of persona that we wanted information back from, right? So the survey wasn't sent out to school site leadership or district leadership like principals or instructional technologists or even directors of technology. We focused primarily on classroom teachers, and that was to make sure we were identifying challenges that existed in the classroom, not perceived challenges that may be sitting at the school site level or at the district level. And because we know from previous research and previous endeavors of this kind that those perceptions can be different. And so by drilling down into a teacher cohort, a population of teachers, to get access to their thinking about what challenges they faced and how technology is both being used in their context and is perceived to solve some of their challenges, I think was a really important point and part of this survey, to focus specifically on those classroom teachers. So we looked at a number, I wanted to share a number of different demographic data points to sort of contextualize what the results are that we got, so you have an understanding of who we were surveying. So we had a number of teachers across grade levels. As you can see, we had 51% of our population of survey respondents came from the elementary school or K-5 space, 16% from our middle grades, and then 25% high school. And then we had a 7% of teachers who had combined grades, excuse me, perhaps some teachers that served both middle and high school or elementary and middle school. The one thing to note here is that WeVideo teachers were much less likely to be teaching in K-5 compared to that non-WeVideo sample population, which again is closer to the US population. And I think, one of the reasons that could be possible for this is that, we have a lot of middle schools middle schools and high schools that utilize WeVideo, and those active users in the WeVideo population coming from middle and high school, where the majority of US teachers, there's a lot more elementary schools than there are middle schools and high schools, which is why we see that number being high for our non-WeVideo population. Subjects taught, a wide range of subjects taught from our population of teachers that we surveyed. As you can see, we've got English language arts, math, STEM, social studies, the humanities, and then some other categories, and then other common subjects that were taught specifically by WeVideo teachers. And this is common to the use cases of our product. So these teachers, it's not surprising to see, came from the TV, film, video production space or the digital media and broadcasting space. That tracks really well with how we see our product actualized in classrooms across the country. So just interesting, the non-WeVideo population, we see a lot of English language arts teachers and math teachers, which again, as we've been saying, is closer to, but not representative, but closer to representation of the US population. So interesting that we had a number of different subject matter experts in the survey. And then length of teaching career, we see here the bulk of our survey respondents were 10 plus year teaching veterans. And most of the WeVideo respondents fell in that as well, which is interesting to me because I always have that myth in my mind of older educators not being at the front of adoption of technology. But the WeVideo population that we surveyed, we see the bulk of those teachers came in from that 10 plus years of experience. And these are active users of our product. So in my mind, that sort of chips away at that myth that older, more seasoned veteran educators are not adopting technology, which is an interesting just aside for me. And then lastly, we broke it down by region and metro class. So just a point of emphasis here is that our region map is from a specific source. There are other research organizations that may use slightly different regional maps. But as you see here, the distribution of teachers who responded to the survey, where they came from, fairly well distributed between the Midwest, Northeast, South, and West for WeVideo. A little less so for our non-WeVideo participants. We see less of a distribution coming from the West, more from the South. And then we had a demographic question on the survey in which teachers self-selected the kind of district that they taught in, so urban, rural, and suburban, and you can see the distribution of respondents along those metro class lines. So I hope that provides some context in who our survey respondents are. And now we want to get into the data summary. So what did we get back from these folks that we went out with this survey?
So the biggest thing is that there were really two major challenges two major challenges, and those were student engagement and discipline. Those really, you can kind of think of those as two sides of the same coin, but those were both identified as the major challenges that teachers across the board, so both our WeVideo and non-WeVideo respondents, that was the number one challenge that they faced in the classroom, was lack of student engagement or involvement and challenging student behavior. And the other big insight is that very few teachers, less than 50%, believe that their current strategies are effective at addressing these challenges. So they're seeing that these are challenges, and they're also seeing that what they're doing is not working. A couple of other things that teachers also found difficult were lesson planning and grading. Particularly our WeVideo respondents said that lesson planning, grading, time management, just a lack of time in the day is something that we often hear from teachers. It was a major challenge. And then we also understood that the WeVideo sample saw that technology could help address these challenges at a much higher rate than the non-WeVideo users. So WeVideo users who were using technology, 70% of them believed that technology could help address these challenges, versus 49% of non-WeVideo users believed that. So there's a lot of kind of resistance to technology. We had a pretty significant number of respondents who cited technology as a problem rather than a solution. And there was some hesitancy to embrace more technology, given the fact that we heard a lot from respondents about cell phones in the classroom and students being addicted to technology, and students trying to play games and doing things, misusing technology. And so a lot of those teachers actually saw technology as a problem. And so it really helps us hone in on, if we're going to use technology to solve these problems, we have to use it in the right way. Otherwise, it becomes a problem in and of itself. And we chose one of the most insightful quotes, I think, that captures everything. That student behavior and motivation are the most challenging aspects. Many students come to school expecting to be entertained and not willing to put in the effort to be successful. We saw comment after comment after comment from respondents that mirrored this comment, either pieces of it or the whole thing. That it's student behavior and motivation that are the most challenging things, even when we consider pay structures and time management and lesson planning and administrative paperwork and all of the things that teachers have to do that could be challenging. These bubbled up as the most challenging. So now let's kind of talk about technology in the classroom. So over 50% of our teachers use video in the classroom. So, and this could be any kind of video. So not just WeVideo, but any kind of video technology, whether that's educational videos that you get offline, like a YouTube, videos in curricula. Over 50% of all teachers are using video, and most users, particularly our WeVideo users, believe that video technology improves the student learning outcomes. So they believe that this is an effective solution. Specifically, our WeVideo teachers, 83% believe that WeVideo enhances engagement. So we have a very strong correlation between student engagement and video technology. But as we mentioned in the previous slide, we have to make sure that we're doing it the right way in order to solve these problems. So with that, I'll pitch it back over to Ryan to really dig into what are we talking about when we say student engagement, and how do we define that?
Yeah, so I think it's an interesting look, the data that was presented to us in terms of the challenges being, okay, students are not motivated, they're not engaged, and what does that mean, right? And what I found so striking in some of those data points was when teachers, said that they don't believe that their methods, the current instructional strategies, is helping to solve or could help to solve the challenge of student engagement. Yet a large portion of those, specifically related to the WeVideo sample, believed that video technology specifically, and technology generally, was useful in improving learning outcomes or engaging students, right? So, okay, there's something going on with our traditional, maybe instructional strategies and toolkits. There's something that we're drilling into around the effectiveness of technology and video technology specifically to help perhaps solve some of these challenges. So when we started to dive into our thematic analysis of the survey data, student engagement came up over and over again. We shared that quote, which is really illuminating, and that sort of captured the vibe, so to speak, of what the comments were that came in through the survey about that challenge specifically. In my time in education, specifically looking at things like maker education or ed tech instruction, right? There are many, many studies on student engagement that have happened academically over the years. We defined our sort of bucket areas of student engagement along 3 lines that was according to a framework that was, a foundational study of student engagement by Fredericks in 2004 that's been built on over the years, where the definitions of student engagement divided them along 3 dimensions. So behavioral engagement, emotional engagement, and cognitive engagement. Now, when you read these definitions, there's going to be a lot of overlap, and one is definitely going to impact the other. These constructs, these dimensions do not exist in a vacuum or a silo, right? They all impact one another. So the way that Fredericks and others have defined behavioral engagement is about students observing community norms and participating in activities, and really looks at how involved or interested students appear to be in their learning that's connected to their classes, that's connected to their schools or each other. Emotional engagement, looks at student feelings of interest, boredom, happiness, sadness, anxiety, all of the emotions that can bubble up to the surface when students are in school and really looking at like a sustained connection a student has towards any aspect of learning, schools, or education generally. So it's the emotional connection that a student has toward the concept of school or being educated. That is emotional engagement. And then cognitive engagement, very closely related to motivation, involves that student's desire and ability to engage in a variety of strategies and to self-direct learning. Now, we all know as educators, there's students that are intrinsically motivated and students that need that intrinsic support and that push to become more cognitively engaged. Not all students are de facto engaged when they come to us. And from where they're at, and a large part of teaching, right, is meeting those students to help them become cognitively engaged, to produce meaningful student involvement throughout the learning experience. So when we looked at student behavior, or student engagement along these dimensions, and we began to look into the data to see, what solutions technology might produce along these different dimensions and interconnect them in some way, right? Because if you think about student engagement as a whole, as a holistic concept, a student who's not emotionally invested in school is going to be less cognitively engaged in your classroom. There's going to have perhaps more, and perhaps that disengagement cognitively and emotionally turns into behavioral challenges, right? I'm struggling with something cognitively. I'm not invested in this because this activity is boring to me, right? And so I'm going to act out or be emotionally apathetic towards whatever it is that I'm being presented today. So I think, right, as we think about these concepts, they're not, they shouldn't be taken individually, but rather along dimensionally along these three different dimensions. So as we started to think about what could this mean and how might we help solve for student engagement and what technology's role in this is as a tool, right? We start thinking about things that we know, that can help motivate students, that can help engage and enhance the learning experience, so that cognitive motivation and that emotional attachment is there, so that we pare down the amount of behavioral challenges we see, right? And I'm not saying that this is a panacea for all of these student engagement challenges, but rather one look or one lens that we can apply to begin thinking about solutions to this. Because as we saw from the survey, if this is the biggest challenge now, and I would assume to guess this has been a big challenge for some time, we want to make sure that technology is going to work for teachers in order to solve some of these issues. As Chris said at the top, one of the reasons he's in product management is to help design technology to work for teachers. And I think that's something that we saw and we've concluded from this study is that that's what technology needs to do. It needs to help teachers solve what needs to be solved in the classroom. If we're talking specifically about student engagement, how might we use technology to motivate and be impactful in the lives of students so that they want to come to school, they want to engage cognitively, they want to learn and demonstrate their learning. But first, right, what we learned is the tool itself has to be able to lessen the burden on a teacher rather than add to it. So tools that help save time in lesson planning, or some of those more rote or mundane or repetitive tasks that are necessary part of the job, right? Technology that's easier to adopt, it's easier to and more reliable to use with students, right? These barriers to entry need to be lessened and or removed in order for that technology to help solve things like student engagement. So that came up over and over again in the survey in relation to that. And we can do that by building tools that are easily accessible and reliable. And then once that barrier to entry is removed, how are teachers taught to use this technology with their students to ensure that it's engaging and enhancing? So better training that makes the onboarding and the learning of that tool faster, that applies and aligns better to assessments or standards or ways of instructing students in the classroom that's going to enhance the motivation to learn, that's going to provide more cognitively interesting and enhanced lessons. The technology is a tool that can work towards those goals, right? So if you have a way to engage students that may not be traditional, that may be and alternative assessment. Like, does that tool fit with that? And making sure that it better fits with some of those more alternative assessments. And then creating a better alignment between the goals of a district, the goals of the parents, and the goals of the teachers who are teaching the students, in order to lessen the challenges of student engagement. If tech is purported to do these things, and the district is behind purchasing a tech tool and integrating in the classroom, right? The communication to parents, the alignment with the goals of the district and the teachers to the parents, it's important to align ourselves in a way that everybody's working towards the same goal, which is improving learning outcomes for our young people and our students. So, as we think about specifically then, where we saw this come up mostly in relation to WeVideo specifically, we know that folks shared that 83% of our WeVideo teachers talked about how they believe WeVideo helps engage their students. And in a number of different use cases that we've seen interactive video and multimedia creation be utilized, right? Along these, 5 bucket areas that we've seen the most use out of, and have seen teachers solve for some things like student engagement, whether that's, operating in a flipped classroom, using asynchronous videos to help deliver background information or to collect knowledge from students, used in project-based learning contexts. That's really where you're talking about alternative assessment, using video to promote different ways of demonstrating mastery, in summative informative assessments, making assessment fun, making it not something that feels laborious and like a chore, but something that rather is allowing students to express themselves, which is a much more engaging and intrinsically motivating activity. Immersive lessons that are interactive and helping review homework. Some of those maybe, again, more mundane, more rote, more repetitive tasks, allowing video to play a role in that can be absolutely motivating and engaging for students. And then, we have a number of resources that can help if we're learning more about ways that our programs can help maybe begin to solve for some of these challenges. We offer a number of different ways that we're prepared to support districts and teachers in their journey with technology and getting closer to those aligned goals that we have of utilizing our tools to solve for student engagement. So there's a number of different things that we do to try to help with that. But before we kind of dive deeper into a conversation about your ideas or solutions, I just wanted to pitch it back over to Chris and kind of talk through some conclusions of the study that we saw.
I think we've touched on several different solutions throughout here, but I really wanted to just kind of summarize. Ultimately, teachers found that engaging and motivating students is very challenging. And even though they believe that technology generally can help, a lot of the times when it's implemented, it actually causes more problems than it solves. So if you think about a teacher who is in the classroom and they have lesson planned for a specific digital curriculum, and then that curriculum doesn't work that day, it does the exact opposite. Now the teacher is scrambling. Now the students are sitting around waiting for troubleshooting. So when technology is not used the right way, it actually causes just as many problems as it's supposed to solve. So the other frustrating thing that can actually make technology not work for teachers is when the solutions are not easy enough for teachers to use, and where students and teachers are going back and forth, like, what button do I click? That causes more problems than it solves. And so that's why we saw such a high percentage of users who actually saw that technology is a problem rather than a solution. So we want to focus on how technology can be the solution to these problems, but if we don't, it has to be at a kind of a bare minimum threshold to be able to solve those problems. The other thing we heard consistently throughout the survey was the lack of training. And you know, I know it's not for lack of trying, but teachers don't feel like they are trained on the tools that they're being given. They don't feel like, from both the ed tech solution providers like us, as well as from the district and their administration. So we've got to work together to figure out a way to get teachers more comfortable using this technology. And one of the ways that we think about doing that is meeting teachers where they are. So this is very, very critical, because different teachers are at different levels of technology adoption. But we saw a lot of, it needs to work with my Google Classroom. If you use Google Classroom or Canvas, or my LMS, it needs to work within the environment that I'm already in, rather than me having to go look at a different environment and learn something new. So we need to meet teachers where they're at. And we all use technology. Again, going back to the myth that Ryan kind of helped us dispel, everyone uses technology. And so one of the challenges in ed tech is, how do we look at the models of technology that everyone is using and adopt some of those models instead of making up new ones that teachers have to learn. And then finally, if we can solve those problems, if the formula is right, if it's reliable, easy to use, incorporated in the curriculum and trained, then technology can help to motivate and engage students, particularly tools such as WeVideo, that fostering creativity, that give an authentic view, that make learning engaging and fun and interactive. All of those things, technology can solve these problems, but only if we do it in the right way. So with that, I think we can start into our question and answer part of the webinar. I'm going to kick it off by just throwing you a question, Ryan, about, we know that there's kind of a tendency when adopting technology for teachers to just take something that they were doing, like pen and paper, and throw it into a PDF and call that technology.
Yep.
What are the most honest and authentic ways to implement tech so that they're not doing that? Because that just causes more frustration.
Sure. I think that's a really important question. And I think before I answer that, I just want to give the audience a chance to, please, if you have questions for us about anything the survey that you saw in the survey, or comments you have on the data we presented, you know, does this resonate? Is this something you've seen yourself in your own practice? Because I'm going to answer these questions that we're going to have as we kick this discussion off. I'm going to try to take the answer from actual things I've seen in the field by when I get to speak, because I and Chris and I both have the wonderful job of getting to talk to educators all the time. I know Chris does it. I know I do it. And so some of these questions, I'm going to try to answer them through the lens of what I've heard and folks that have shared their thinking with me. But please, we want to hear from you. If you have any questions about any of this, comments, how you've seen this operate, what your opinion on student engagement is, and how tech can help be a solution for that, please, I'd love to see it. And we can build off of your comments as well. But to answer your question, Chris, I think authenticity is important. And I think one of the things that we all need to keep in mind, and this is especially true for folks that work at ed tech organizations like ours, is that the product is just a tool, that the teacher is the user of that tool, right? And I think the tool is designed to help, with whatever initiative is already in play. And you said something really important, meeting the teachers where they're at. It's not trying to force a idea of this tool onto you, but rather, where does this tool fit best in your toolkit to support your instruction that's already ongoing, or that it enhances a lesson. And you're right. I think there's an old model for integrating tech, right? And substitution is the lowest form of why we would use tech, meaning I'm just going to replace this worksheet with a PDF. Like, that's not really enhancing. That's not really utilizing the tool to enhance or deepen engagement in an activity. Where that really comes into play is transforming the activity. So it's based on a concept or an instructional strategy you've already done, but that tool comes in to add an element of creativity in the work, add an alternative form of assessment into the curriculum, allow a student to demonstrate understanding of a concept in a new way. And so I think finding the connections to what is already there's already occurring in the classroom, because again, it's hard to just say, do something completely different than you're doing right now. That takes time. And we saw that time is a challenge. So we don't want to do that. What we want to do is find ways for us, who work with these tools every day to help teachers understand, okay, this is going to fit really well with this. And this is going to provide deep motivation for students to complete the activity. And I want to give a quick example of this. I just did a great podcast with a WeVideo ambassador in Illinois. And she has taken a traditional history biography project and turned it in where it was, for a long time, it's just been an essay on a biography of somebody. And they turned it into a podcast modeled after this NPR's This American Life. And what she found was a much deeper connection to the content, a much more motivated student group because they were sharing their voice. And they wanted it to be perfect because people were going to hear them, and they needed their facts to be right, and they needed the connections to learning to come through because it was going to be shared a little bit more broadly than maybe that essay was. So that's what I mean about like authentically integrating that into the curriculum. It's not, yes, sure, it replaced an essay, but it also enhanced the experience because now you're adding an element of creativity and you're adding an element of student voice that goes beyond just the reading of an essay by a teacher. They're going to share this project with their peers and with their communities. So it was much more engaging activity for them. So that's kind of how I would answer that question. Just to sum that up: one, find spots that already feel natural to include this tool, and two, really focus on what that tool is going to do to enhance the lesson rather than just replace the lesson. So, but as we saw in the survey, in order to do that, the tool's got to be easy to use or quick to adopt. And so, in your world, Chris, in products specifically, right? Like what work can that product do to make sure that these tools are reliable and easy to use and readily adoptable by teachers and students, right? So like, that's what we said needs to be the right formula. And if we're wanting the teachers to use this to solve for something like student engagement, what's your approach or what's your perspective on how successful organizations do that?
Yeah, so I think that's a loaded question because easy to use, the goalpost keeps shifting. So easy to use, if you think about easy to use, 30 years ago, Microsoft Word was easy to use compared to the typewriter, and then Google Docs became easy to use, and now we have tools that can generate a survey for you with 3 sentences, or not a survey, an essay. And so easy to use, that goalpost constantly shifts. And so I think, as far as we had a great comment in the chat that said that it's difficult to teach the tech and the subject matter, meaning we've got to be able to have tech that you can jump into. Now, the more flexibility, or the more flexibility you have in a tool, the more features that you have in a tool, the more complex it gets naturally. So with WeVideo, we can do all sorts of cool things, but you need to have kind of that bare minimum threshold. Like, how can I accomplish one and solve one problem for 80% of people while still allowing that extra 20% to dive in? And so I think that's really the key, is solving for the 80%. The brand new student who's coming in and has never, in WeVideo's case, has never created a video, has never done anything. Can we get it so easy that person can go and successfully record a podcast, create a video, and finish their assignment without the teacher having to dedicate, okay, I'm gonna have to dedicate an entire class period to teaching you how to use this tool before you can use this tool. And that's the key.
Absolutely. And I think there's some really great comments in the chat, so thank you, and keep those coming. One thing from Tara, thank you for your comment. And I don't want to misconstrue. I did not mean to say that PDFs are a bad thing. I was trying to make that connection to replacing and otherwise using technology to just replace something you already did. So meaning like if I had a homework sheet that I turned it into a PDF and saying that I'm using technology just to turn that worksheet into a PDF, because I agree with you. There are many cases where PDFs can help students in their completing an activity or accessing the information in the PDF rather than just having it on a piece of paper. So maybe a bad example on my part, but just wanted to say, like, I'm not devaluing PDFs. I was just trying to use that as an example of something that we don't want to take a homework set and just replace it with a PDF and say, I'm using technology and this is enhancing the learning experience. Yes, that's fine. That's why we're here. We're here to learn from each other and because that, yeah, and your point is totally well received, because I agree with you on the reasons why we would use PDFs for accessibility for sure. Simple tools encourage creativity. Hi, Karen. I didn't see you in here. Karen, a long time WeVideo brand ambassador as well. Just shout out to you. Yeah, simple tools that encourage creativity. Somebody mentioned something like Flipgrid, right? Which was a long time a video tool as well that helped, right? Simple tools. And I think Chris spoke to it, messaging the simplicity of our tool as well. WeVideo is built for classroom teachers. It's built for education. It should be simple and easy to use, and that's what we strive to do. So I like that sort of layer to it. It's a simple tool that encourages creativity that can go a long way.
Yeah, I think one thing to comment though is there's always a trade-off between simplicity and flexibility. There's always that trade-off, and so we have to make sure that we're solving, and we get a lot of feedback about, can you do this cool editing feature that you might be able to do in like a professional video editing software, and we really have to. Yeah, we could, and we throw that onto our board, a list of things to do on our backlog, and we're like, oh, that would be really cool to be able to do that neat editing feature. But we have to be very careful about doing that, because the more features that we throw in, the more difficult it is for that brand new student. And we want to be able to have teachers to be able to say, okay, you've never done anything like this ever, and I want you to turn your social studies essay into a video, and that student to be successful their first time.
Yeah.
And I think that's the trade-off.
And I just want to highlight this comment from Pam. I love this. As a technology coordinator, I teach the tech so the students can jump in and extend the curriculum, which is fantastic. And the tech is the tool so that the students can have those extension opportunities, the expanded ways of interacting with material, expanded ways of learning material, demonstrating mastery. So I really like that. It encapsulates so much of, I think, what a lot of folks that I've met that work in that technology coordinator role. That's it. You teach the tech, you help the teachers, so that, again, we're meeting them where they're at. And as a tech company, I think it's incumbent on us to help get those things closer together, meaning help get the curriculum closer to the tools and facilitate the ways that you can support extensions of the curriculum, so that the teachers are not encumbered by learning so much new stuff when they've already got enough challenges to worry about, as we've seen. So great comment. Thank you, Pam. So any other questions as we start to wrap up here? Are there any other thoughts and questions that you have?
I had one other question, Ryan, while we're waiting for anything else. What mindset or structural changes would you recommend to a teacher who is trying to solve for this problem, to increase engagement, particularly with technology?
Yeah, and again, I'll answer that through the lens of folks who I've talked to that have approached this challenge in this way. And I think it's, and look, a lot of the times when we talk to teachers or when I have them on to show off their work, a question I often ask is, if I'm new to this, what do I do first? And I think it's a lot of the answers that came from that is to start small, to choose one activity that you could do that you feel like would be a more engaging experience for students. And sometimes, so I'm going to go back to the back to school time period. We had a number of educators that I talked to that were like, I'm just going to do my introductory icebreaker activity as a video project. And they did the 3 in me and had students share about themselves in video format. And that sort of took the anxiety away from doing these massive projects that people think you need to do with video. You can start small. Do a 1-day project where you're using 3 pieces of stock media. You have 3 timeline tracks, and that's how you're showing the class and your teacher who you are. Really simple, really quick, really easy to do, right? Easy to facilitate. And every teacher does icebreaker activities. And so it's that starting early and starting small that I think will help to change the mindset of what you can do with video and how video can extend and enhance the curriculum or any activity that you have that could be more motivating for students to engage with, right? Yeah, and I saw Pam echo the start small. Karen's comment here, encourage the early adopter students to take on a teaching role is always helpful. Students love to learn from each other. Absolutely. I remember my days when I first started getting into teaching ed tech. I was teaching a program called Scratch in after schools, and I had so many 6th graders that were experts in Scratch that I was like, all right, guys, here we go. This is the project we're going to do. Help me learn this project and help your peers learn it if they need help. And the amount of distributed knowledge you get from that is incredible. So definitely that's a huge part of this too. And you can do that by starting small as well.
So it looks like Christina asked a question. Other than adding suggestions on WeVideo, is there a way you recommend update improvements for the tool? So we do have our product portal. So I'm going to put the link into the chat here. If you haven't used the product portal, please go and check it out. It's a place for you to submit ideas. They go directly to our team, and I do understand kind of that feeling that suggestions go into the void, and technology takes time to build, and we have limited resources, just like all of you, as far as what we can build and when. But we try to prioritize the features that are going to give the most impact for the most number of students. And so that's kind of our mantra. So when we get feedback that feels niche or feels like it's only going to impact a small percentage or a certain type of class, we tend to deprioritize those in favor of those features that are going to greatly impact a large number of students. That's kind of the framework we use. But any kind of suggestion, we're happy to entertain. And if you want to voice your suggestion, submit an idea through the product portal. We pick people to meet with, and you can kind of pitch your idea to us. We'll definitely take it under consideration.
And Chris, you're great at that. I love that you provide that open door, so to speak, to speak with users that want to understand or that you want to understand more from, which is really cool. I think that emphasis, it goes a long way. Well, I think we are at the end of our time here, and just a last from me is that I think this, even though going into this study, I had a hunch about what we would find just from how being close to education over the past decade and a half, but it came in stark relief what we saw in that survey and how we need to move forward in partnership with districts and school site leaders and teachers themselves to make these solutions a reality. And so we hope to do that now and in the future. And Thank you so much for being here today and for being active in the chat. This was a great chat. Thank you so much for leaving your comments and your ideas. It led to a very rich discussion about these topics. So Chris, any last words for the audience today?
No, I think Karen has a question about AI Buddy. So I might take that and respond personally. As an ambassador, we'll reach out and answer that question. But yeah, I really appreciate everybody's time, and we are planning to follow this up with a couple of assets. So stay tuned. We'll email out once we have those assets ready. So we're considering some publications and some things that you can use of this survey information. Also, please take a second to complete the exit survey. So let us know kind of how you felt this webinar was. Was it a good use of your time? Did you feel like it was insightful? Is there anything we can do better moving forward? So Tessa has also thrown the link into the chat. Tessa from our team. So if you can use the QR code or use the link in the chat, we really appreciate the feedback, but really appreciate everybody's time.
Yes, absolutely. And please do fill that out. I believe in that survey, there is a way to mark that you'd like to learn more, or reach out to a WeVideo team member, and we'd be happy to speak with you about anything that you are curious about. And there's just one more question. Is this meeting recorded? Yes, it is recorded. You'll be able to access this link on demand. We'll also send a follow-up email with the link to this recording as well. So you can go back and watch what you missed. But thank you again for being here today. Thank you so much, Chris, for joining me. And thank you again to you all for your participation and your interest in this very important topic. This is our last webinar event for the year. So we will see you next year in 2025 for more WeVideo webinars. But until then, take care. Good luck finishing out the next few weeks before you head out on break. And thank you so much again. And we will be talking to you soon. Take care, everybody. Bye now.